Someone asked a great question. They asked me, what is your view of reality? And they followed it up by saying, some people will say, or some spiritual teachers will say that it's all a dream or something to that effect. What is your view? This is a great question. I like when people ask direct questions because, especially when they arise out of genuine curiosity, because I think they can lead to some interesting discussion or exchange. But I will try to answer this question as best I can. I should say first that when I answer a question like this, I often gauge it toward the person I'm having the conversation with, meaning where are they asking it from? What insight are they engaging, or what sort of inquiry are they working through? And what is their overall level of experience and insight? I don't really think through that or analyze it, but I do have a sense of it. So I may answer this question differently at different times. Indeed, if you ask me this question tomorrow or a year from now, I'll likely give a different sort of answer. But in this case, the answer came something like this. If I'm really honest, if you ask, what is my view of reality? What I'm more interested in is not view and not reality, or what's out there, or how things are, or what the philosophical truth is, which seems to be where that question points. But for me, it doesn't point there. For me, it points to the you part. What is your view of reality? And the answer to that question goes very deep. You could say it goes so deep that it ends up being the question of birth and death, as described in Zen, in such a dramatic way, but that's really what this comes down to, isn't it? Birth, suffering, control, lack of control, death. Yeah? So when you look backward, when you look inward, when you try to take that backward step, when you investigate the nature of who you feel like you are, who you take yourself to be, who it seems like you are, even if you've never investigated that or even considered it, when you begin to investigate that, you're looking in the right place. So on a more superficial level, this often is something I have to try to help people orient to before awakening, because some people, not everybody, some people are just very interested in philosophical things. Oh, what's it like? What's this like? What's that like? What is this doctrine like? What does that mean? What is these Buddhist terms? And what's the most, uber stage of enlightenment? And right. But it's very intellectual. So often my first inclination is to start to point someone away from the objects of your mind, which are thoughts, and toward the subject, whatever that is, the thinker, the one who feels like it's curious about those things, also the one that feels like it's suffering. So at a deeper level of discussion, which is where this conversation was, the sense of there being a view of the way things are, the way the world is. It makes sense to ask a question like that of someone who talks in the way I do. Why? Well, because of the way the human mind is wired, the way we engage these grandiose ideas and movements in life, like religion and spirituality and enlightenment and awakening and the big questions, we tend to engage them by talking to other humans about their beliefs, their belief systems. So for instance, often someone who I know and I am having a sort of casual conversation with, but they're maybe Christian or something like that, and they have a tendency to ask what I believe, or if, they say, oh, you're Buddhist or something, or not that I am, but they find out I make videos like this, or that I practiced Zen at some point. The question is often, what do you believe? We believe this, this, and this, and this. Like the religion is defined by what they believe, right? Not every Christian, of course, but it's a common thing, largely in Western religions. And what do people argue about? They argue about their beliefs, who the real Messiah was, whether there was a Messiah, whether there's an afterlife, all of it, right? That's what the arguments are about. And these aren't just arguments. These cause wars. These cause untold human suffering. But they're beliefs, yeah? So the question, what do you believe, comes up naturally. It's a simple, natural human question. It's a natural curiosity. But I would even argue the person asking that question wants to look deeper even in themselves. They just don't know what to ask. They're asking the questions they've been learned or taught to ask. They're asking the questions and seeing the world through the lens that they've learned to see the world through. And depending on the family and church and whatever you grew up in, it may have started at a very young age where you're always taught that your beliefs are what define you. It's important. It's really important. It'll decide whether you burn in hell or you go to an afterlife, right? To put it simply. But anyway, there's a huge emphasis on belief. What do you believe? Is it this God or that God? Is it God have this name or does God have that name? Are you Protestant or Catholic? Are you Christian or are you Muslim? Do you believe in a Western God or do you believe in Eastern traditions or Eastern gods? Or perhaps you're Hindu, perhaps you're Buddhist, right? So we tend to think this way. We categorize things in views and paradigms, and it feels purposeful. It feels important. It feels real. It feels like who we are. And to some degree, it is who we are when you consider the fact that we live in groups of people. We need validation, and some groups require you to believe what they believe, or you lose the validation, right? So there's a bit of a survival mechanism that comes into this. So it's a strong inclination to look for your tribe, right? To find the right group or find the group that agrees with your group. And then we use this as a sort of communicative social currency. Oh, what do you believe? Do you believe what I believe? Can you be in my club? Can I be in your club? Right? That kind of thing. Now I'm kind of simplifying it, but I think these points I'm making are pretty accurate, and I see this a lot. So when we start asking these big questions, what do you believe? What does reality look like to you? What's your view? We're getting down past just the superficial curiosity type stuff into the emotion body, right? Because it matters in many circles what you believe. Or it matters what you say you believe. Let's just say that, because that gets into a whole other thing, right? But it matters what you say you believe. It gets you in the club or gets you kicked out of the club, right? Might get you status in the club. So we learn that as a coping mechanism to say that, to put belief above authenticity sometimes, or at least stated belief, right? We put it above authenticity sometimes, probably most of the time. Authenticity might say, I really doubt all this. I grew up Christian. I grew up with parents who told me it was just this way. And, the Catholics are wrong and the Protestants are right, or vice versa, or whatever. I grew up that way. And that's how life looked to me until I started questioning it. And I was told not to question it. And I didn't for a long time. And then when I finally did, I was honest with myself and authentic. And I said, these aren't the questions I care about, whether God's name is this or that, right? Whether this church or that church is right or whatever. I'm curious about the big questions and the personal questions and the real authentic questions. Why do I suffer? Why does it feel like people around me are full of shit sometimes? Why do so many bad things happen in the world? And they seem to involve humans. What is all this about? Who am I? Those are the questions that really matter. That's where I want you to go. That's where I want anyone to go if they're inclined. So from the standpoint of belief, I've talked a lot about religions and groups and so forth. I don't have opinions on any of that stuff. I don't really care. Believe what you want to believe or not. Beliefs to me are ghosts. They don't mean anything, really, ultimately. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with any of that. I don't care what anyone believes or doesn't believe. When it comes to this subject, I just want to encourage anyone to see the limitations of trying to see the world through the lens of belief and groupthink and tribalism and nationalism and ideology. All of that is just a bunch of beliefs. Some may seem more important or more real because they're about people or countries or places or histories. They're beliefs. But there's something here that's not a belief. Something here that doesn't get tainted, changed, corrupted, or freed by a belief. What is that? Do you feel it? If you've listened this long, you probably feel it. There's something here that's not touched by anything the mind can construct, anything you've been taught, any group you've been in, whether you've been ostracized or welcomed, whether you've convinced yourself you're a good person or a bad person, whether your family made you feel like you are worthless or you have some special worth that puts you above all others. Both are pretty dysfunctional ways to be brought up, but it happens. Doesn't matter. All of that is belief. All of that is belief. And guess what? Beliefs come and go. But right now, there's something that doesn't come and go. There's something here that doesn't come and go. There's something there that doesn't come and go. I point to it all the time. I'm pointing to it right now. But you can't learn it. You can't form a belief based on it or by it or from it or around it and actually get what I'm saying. To get what I'm saying, you have to be willing to let go of beliefs, which sometimes means letting go of tribe, political position, family history, your identities around being the smart one, the beautiful one, the hardworking one, or the poor one, or the victimized one. All of these have relative truth. And yet when it comes to what we're doing here, every single one of them will be a sticky little piece of candy to get your dirty little fingers of the mind on, right? The ego loves anything that's charged or can grab onto, it can identify with. The ego being a collection of thoughts. It's just a way of speaking. So what's right here that's none of that? It's not an ego. It's not a collection of thoughts, beliefs, memories, most of which are distorted anyway. But here it is. That's where I want you to go. That's where I want everyone to go. Start there and stay there. All deeper insights, subtler insights that have fancy names, like non-duality and dependent co-arising and Brahman consciousness, all of it. Those insights will only dawn through this lens that I'm pointing to right now, and you carry it around with you all the time. If you can access it through meditation, great. If you access it through self-inquiry, great. If you just listen to a video like this and tune into it and you already know it, and you just sit with it and attune to it and let it become the most prominent thing in your experience, great. If you have to ask questions, who am I? Where am I? I feel like I'm here somewhere, but well, I'm not those thoughts, because the thoughts come and go. But I'm something. Whatever I am is not coming and going. Whatever's here that's not any of those thoughts, it's self-confirmatory by its very being, is undeniable. It's not coming or going. Boom, there it is. Yeah? So then, to answer the initial question, at the level of the conversation I was having, as this deepens, this profound presence, this indistinguishability, this accommodation of everything, all things, all movement and stillness, it dawns that the fundamental view, any fundamental view, any inherent view, any frame of reference, even the most subtle, and they get very subtle, like, I am over here looking at something over there. I am the one holding the view, the perception, the paradigm of my life, me, my past, my future, my struggle, my spiritual journey, all of it, right? It's just a view. And in the moment it arises or feels like it's binding experience or defining experience right now, it can be seen that that's arising with and dependent upon a sense of the one holding the view. This is very subtle. But once you see it, things will cease and subside at even deeper levels. That's the answer. The answer is the question doesn't make sense in direct experience. First of all, because I don't even know where to look to reference someone or something that holds a view. I don't even know where that would be. There are relative views, opinions, and beliefs, and they're fine. Some are more real than others. Some are more accurate than others. Some are destructive, but that's the relative world. View exists only in the relative world. So it has relative value and it has relative existence, meaning it's dependently originated with something else. And that's the holder of the view. That's the relative world. So there's no answer to the question, if I'm honest. Now, practically speaking, I do use paradigms and frames of reference when working with people who are waking up. But I think I'm pretty careful to consistently point out that these are situational, practical, contextual, and that I don't want anyone to hold on to these and plant your flag there thinking that's the final. You've gotten to the final. If there's a you going through time, you haven't gotten to the final. There's a sense of a you that can do something, that has doership. So, and that's all fine, but it's a thought. So there are relative views and frames of reference that can be helpful, like disentangling yourself from thought, disregarding thought. But that can become not helpful in other circumstances, like when you're trying to bypass instead of just feeling something. That's just an example. So frames of reference around awakening and realization do arise in the moment in a teaching situation or reflecting situation, but they're really there to correct something that feels fixated. So we may already have an overreaction in one direction that's been habituated, that we identify with. So sometimes it's useful to use a certain paradigm, approach, inquiry to undermine that fixation or that obstruction. But then you have to let it go as well. And that means everything has to go. All your precious spiritual concepts, experiences, beliefs, paradigms, people, it's got to go. It will go unless you get in its way. That's my answer.